Hello and welcome to the GCSUNScast, the longest running Gold Coast Sun show on the interwebs, and that is thanks to our Patreon sponsors, Dale Snelling, Jack's dad, Paul Vosti, Robbie Fiorini, Brodie Burgess, Kate Kelland, Tom Kim, Chris Moore and Tim. You can join the show and help our Patreon sponsors by heading to patreon.com/GCSUNScast where you can support the show. Or help support the show and head on over to our YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, or our wherever you like to get your podcasts from, Spotify, Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, and subscribe, and review the show to help other people find it. With that out of the way, I'm your host Shane, and welcome to the GCSUNScast. So it's been a couple of weeks since our last episode. Let's touch on the AFLW, because we have such a big show ahead, so many things to discuss. I mean, we're only 5 days away from the Gold Coast Suns' first game of 2021 for premiership points against the West Coast Eagles. So let's touch on the AFLW first. And unfortunately, not much good news has come out of the AFLW this season. Since our last episode, there's been 4 rounds. Round 4, the Suns played Freo, lost it by 49 points, 7 goals, 13.55 to 1 goal 6. Round 5, they played West Coast, lost by 1 point, 5 goals 4.34 to 4 goals 9.33. Now, round 6 was the biggest defeat in AFLW history, losing to the Crows by 70 points. 13 goals 7.85 to 2 goals 3.15. And last week against Richmond in Friday Night Lights at Metricon Stadium, we lost by 15 points. 6 goals 5.41 to 4 goals 2.26. Now, not many games are left in this season. It's looking more and more likely like the Gold Coast Suns are going to have a winless season. So not great there for the AFLW side. Hopefully the men's side has more luck. It doesn't help with injuries to Perkins and Jamie Stanton. They're both going to miss the season. So not good stuff happening in the AFLW. One bit of positive news to come out of it today is Lauren Bella is the Round 7 Rising Star. Congratulations to Lauren Bella. And she has been one of the stars for the Suns since they came into the competition last year. Okay, so with that out of the way, have you seen the latest documentary from Amazon, Making Their Mark? Now, this has been touted about for the last year since we heard there was an Amazon documentary film following Stuart Dew around at the footy club. And it's come out Friday, last week, and I binge watched it. There were 7 episodes, each about an hour long. A lot of good stuff, a lot of fluff as well, but a lot of good stuff, especially insight into the way the football club works. We saw Stuart Dew and the way he sort of built up the players around him in training. We saw the way he went and sort of dealt with the break in play between rounds 1 and round 2 last year. And probably one of the more impactful things was that spray that he gave the boys at half time during that Carlton game. Now, if you remember correctly, that Carlton game was atrocious. Right from the start, they came out and they just didn't look like they were even there. They were witches' hats. And Stuart Dew did what every Suns fan around the country was thinking at that time, and he went ballistic at the boys, urging them to stand up and fight for something, because it was such a horrid display. But we saw some really good scenes in that documentary. We saw there was a scene early on in, I think it might have been episode 1, the Suns were training. This must have been pre-season training. It was pissing down rain. It was night. Fantastic footage there. I don't know whether it was because it was in 4K or just we haven't seen close-up footage like that before. Really good sort of stuff. We saw some really good footage of the early wins and having to deal with the pressure and the success that came with Matt Rao. We saw the lows of Rao getting injured and what went through the minds of the coaching staff and the players following that subsequent injury. He had strong words with this during that Saints game. That Saints game, the Bulldogs game, and the Essendon game, I'm probably a bit disappointed we didn't see anything from that Essendon game last year, the draw. But we saw afterwards how he embraced the players. They were hurting. Like, we don't see that sort of footage before where players are hurting probably more than what we are as fans at the end of a really close loss. And we saw that in this documentary, so that was really good stuff. And the Everest Challenge, that was really, really good. I don't know, just good character for Stuart Dew to jump on the bike with Matt Rao and Alex Rigby and to set up this bike challenge to climb the elevation of Mount Everest on a bike. I think it was about 9,000 kilometres or miles. I'm not sure what metric it was in. But Dew was there 4 hours earlier than when Rowell and Rigby showed up, because he knew he was going to struggle. And I think he only completed 3,000 out of the 9,000 by the time the other boys had done their 9,000. But he gave it his everything. Like, that was a full-on, almost 24-hour ride dedication when he didn't need to do something like that. That was really inspirational and shows the sort of character that Stuart Dew is. Really, really good stuff. Now, on tonight's show, we're taking phone calls from listeners and fans that have questions to ask and have things that they want to talk about with the Suns. So let's get to tonight's first phone call. We have Paul Vosti on the line, hopefully. It's ringing. Hello, Paul.
Go, Shane.
How you going? It's Shane from the GCSUNScast. You're live on the air. How's it been? Hello. We're having some technical difficulties here. Paul, can you hear me? Nope, it doesn't look like we've got Paul on the line.
G'day, Shane.
Paul, can you hear me?
Yeah, how you going?
Yeah, good. Sorry, you're live on the air of the GCSUNScast. We've just been talking about the Amazon documentary. Have you seen that?
Yeah, no, I watched it. Had a bit of a binge over the weekend. Watched the 7. It was pretty good.
Yeah, what did you think of the Everest Challenge? That was pretty inspirational from Stuart Dew to do that, wasn't it?
Yeah, a mate of mine has actually did that a couple of months ago at half a seat on the morning. He had to go up 30 times, and so I knew a bit about the Everest Challenge. And, it was great leadership. Brilliant effort from Alex Rigby, Matty Rao.
Yep. So is there anything you wanted to talk about in particular on the show tonight?
In terms of what?
Is there anything you wanted to speak about in particular on the show tonight regarding the Suns?
Oh, just exciting to have an opportunity to see live footy again. It was pretty hard being in Victoria last year, and with COVID and not being able to see any live footy. So I know a few of the boys down here, David Leach and Andrew Wallace, Mark O'Shea, Jen Simmons, a lot of new Gold Coast Suns, Victorian. They're keen to get out and watch the Suns have a few wins this year. Yeah,
absolutely. How do you think the Suns are going to go this year? We've got a couple of expectations, I guess, being put on the club this year. Are you going to be happy if we're pushing for if we don't make finals, or are you putting expectation on the club now to push that extra step and make it up to finals?
I think I've sort of spoken to you. You know, having the not inside work, but the connection between both. 2022 was always sort of the year where it was like the target year where the list profile was starting to find a bit of maturity, and still think 22 is when it's really going to take off. But had to do a thing for Kel too, mid predictions for this year, and I thought 10 to 12 wins was probably right where I was hoping to see the start. You know, around the edge of the 8, through the, you know, anywhere from 8 to 12 on the ladder.
Yeah, it's probably about right. I think we'd be happy with that. But as fans, we've got to start putting expectation on the football club. It's getting to that stage now where the club themselves are putting expectations, and as fans, we've got to do our due diligence as well and expect them to come out. And if not, then we need to ask the hard questions and find constructive criticism and feedback to give the club so that they can improve.
Yeah, absolutely. But it's still contextual, Shane. You got to also look at the back line. I'm really excited to watch the back line this year. You know, Charlie Bellard, Jack Lukosius, Will Power, Jack Bowes. You know, they're young players. Now, if we come up against Jeremy Cameron and Tom Hawkins, and Charlie Ballard's got Cameron and he gets beaten, but you look at the way he goes about it, it's closing. So that's what it's about. It's not about sometimes you're going to get beaten. How do you get beaten? Because that's the same with the young midfield group. There are going to be times when just through lack of games, they're beaten. But if we're going about it the right way, that's the most important.
Yeah, definitely. We're still going to see that development and that learning, but I think now the Suns are going to get judged more on wins and losses than they have in any other year. The Gold Coast Suns had a pre-season game last week against Brisbane. How did you think that game went?
Well, again, you know, the first, like Shane, I'll tell you one thing that I'm noticing is that it's becoming very popular in Victoria as everyone's second side. Because of COVID last year, we got a lot more television exposure, and they play exciting footy. You know, that first half last week against the Lions was as good a footy as any of the games in the whole round. Now, their third quarter was terrible, but you know, again, you just got to look at the. I know everyone, it's a win-loss. Sometimes it's not actually the most important thing. You know, Brisbane are going to contend for, you know, a premiership. Take, you know, Collins up at half time. He plays on the young fullback from Cairns that's only played a handful of games. Now, that changes the whole Caleb Graham. That changes the whole backline structure. Not to say we would have won the game, but in a home and away, Sam Collins stayed on and he's playing on the. But from a learning experience, Caleb Graham got to play with Graham, Star and Joe Dexter. So I thought it was an excellent out, and there was plenty of positive signs. I thought Darcy McPherson tackling, aggressive, hungry best, and there was plenty of other good positives throughout the game.
Yeah, there absolutely was. All right, well, thanks for your call tonight, Paul. I wish you all the best, and hopefully we'll have you on the show in future episodes.
No worries. Have a good night, John. Thank you.
You too. Bye. Okay, so that was our first live call on the air of the GCSUNScast. Now, as we discussed with Paul, the Gold Coast Suns lost to Brisbane last week in a trial match, 13 goals 11, 89 to 18 goals 9, 117. It was a fantastic game of footy when the Suns decided to show up. They had a dominant first half and convincingly won all the key areas: contested possessions, disposals, clearances, inside 50. They just didn't hit the scoreboard enough and have the impact they would have liked. King couldn't make enough opportunities against Andrews. He needs to be better than that. He's only in his third year, so we can't be putting too much pressure on him, but I just don't see the Suns taking that next step to being serious finals contenders. I'm not talking premiership, I'm just talking finals contenders, until King can stand up and be a stronger forward. And hopefully that will come this year, if not next year. Now, Day played well in parts as well as the other key forward. He had his moments, especially early. And then Sexton too. Sexton kicked 6 goals. He had a fantastic display. I think Brisbane just sort of let him off the leash a bit. But the delivery inside 50 really hurt the Suns, and I think that contributed to their inability to find space as Brisbane just flooded the defence. Weller, Ellis, Lukosius and Miller all had great games, I thought. Brodie, Powell and Anderson are the 3 players I reckon we have to keep an eye on this year as having breakout years. Brodie had the 1 goal, 2 behinds and 25 disposals. But most impressive out of that was the 498 metres gained and the 11 score involvements. So that was the equal highest on the ground for score involvements by any player. Now, Powell, 21 disposals, 12 marks, 10 intercepts. I've locked him into my AFL fantasy side. He's going to be a bloke that just excels running off the half-back flank. And Anderson as well, 23 disposals and 7 clearances. He's clearly going to be a prime mover in the midfield. And with Rowell and Greenwood probably getting most of the attention, Anderson should fly under the radar of most clubs. Darcy McPherson was another standout player. 22 disposals, 11 contested and 34 pressure acts and 10 tackles. Pretty impressive from the little pocket rocket. We've always been impressed with McPherson's work rate and his pressure, and he's back to his best, I think. Now, it's going to be a really interesting choice come selection time, because I think it's really down to McPherson or Brodie for that final spot as the sort of half-forward pressure player. McPherson's got the pressure. He brings it in spades, but Brodie's got the ability to have more of an impact with the score and do some damage with his ball use. So it's going to be an interesting choice to see which way the coaching panel goes with that. And we're not going to know teams until probably Friday night. Also, a big takeaway from the game was the new recruit, Oleg Markov. He had 21 disposals, 9 marks, and had really good involvement with his speed early in the game. I think he was taken off a little bit later on and rested. But he joined the rest of the team with that third quarter fade out. It was concerning, this third quarter fade out. Going into half time, I think we'd conceded a couple of goals. But it felt like the sting was out of the game. It felt like Gold Coast had sort of pushed Brisbane out and they weren't really interested. But to come back into the game the way Brisbane did, full credit to Brisbane, but at the same time, Gold Coast just went to sleep. They weren't there. That's a concern. We saw an article today on the AFL website from David Swallow about how it's a concern that they have and they're not going to be able to get to the next step to compete for a flag until they can overcome that habit of dropping away for a quarter or half a quarter and letting teams get the edge. If they can cut that out of the game, we're well on our way to being a final side, and hopefully we see that soon. Looking ahead, to the West Coast game. That's on Sunday, the 21st of March at about 5 p.m. Queensland time. I don't think teams will change too much from the top 25 or so that were playing in the practice game against Brisbane. We know Rankin has been cleared fit today to play, so we expect him to line up in the side. Atkins, I assume, would be a best 22 player, but his pre-season's been interrupted, and I think with the change with rotations being lowered, with the game being longer compared to last year, and the shorter preseason, I think clubs are going to be very cautious about playing people that are underdone. So these players are going to have to prove themselves, and I think Atkins is no exception. He's going to have to force his way into that best 22. I think Harbrow comes into the side, or stays in the side, and it's probably between McPherson and Brodie for that final spot, as I said before. Fiorini, Graham, Burgess and Holman I expect to be cut from the extended squad and be the emergencies for the game. We also had a VFL practice match earlier that day. Gold Coast Suns defeated Brisbane 11 goals 6-72 to 8 goals 8-56. So good improvement from our academy graduates. Davies, Fife, Ace and Conroy all looked to be improving and playing good football. Lemons was the leader of the day. He looked very comfortable playing in defence. And Sharp kicked 2 goals, with Corbett looking very dangerous with the 3. Roses Jr. is also a talking point from this game. Mally Roses Jr. He's recruited to the club as a small forward from Darwin as part of the concessions the club received the other year, and it looks like he's been moved into the midfield. That's where he played the majority of his time in the VFL, and he certainly gave opposition a headache. So if he continues that, it's going to be quite a dilemma, and he could really become that sort of X-factor midfielder if he develops that part of his game and breaks into the AFL side. Now, speaking of the VFL, unfortunately, we've got some bad news, as Conroy, our last remaining ruckman, Matt Conroy, has suffered a knee injury and he's going to be out for the season. It looks like it's going to be his ACL, so unfortunately, we are down a ruck. Now, that doesn't bode well for the Suns. We already have Zach Smith out for 7 to 8 weeks with a PCL injury. Losing Matt Conroy as the other ruckman, the only fit ruck on the list is Jared Witts. What is the club going to do about this? Well, there was a members meeting last Wednesday, I want to say, and this was brought up. The club at this stage didn't know about Conroy, so they were buoyant about Conroy being the long-term replacement. However, they also noted that Burgess would be a short-term ruck. So it looks like Burgess is going to be playing that role. And I suppose you've also got some other capable players in there like Murtagh that could probably be athletic enough to play a ruck position. Otherwise, I'd say the AFL we'd have to pinch hit some players like Ben King or Sam Day in the ruck just to get by. What else happened in this members meeting, you ask? Well, ask the coaching staff how they felt about Jared Harbrow and how likely he would. Well, the question was, what did they perceive his role being at the football club this year? So they said he's likely to play a bit of footy, but they don't expect him to play every week. So that sounds to me very much like the Riscatelli role that Riscatelli had in his final season. So we might see a bit of Harbrow when it's required, but I think he will transition to a reserves VFL sort of coaching role as the season progresses. In saying that, though, they also said that Harbrow has probably had the best preseason he's had in a long time without the hiccup of injuries or any sort of delays to his season. So physically, he's probably at the best he's been for a while. And this could probably see how we go with Harbrow getting that depth. Paul Vosti jumping back into the Spreaker chat as well. Be great to see Will Brodie play. Got his own running coach in the preseason. So that's probably why we've seen Will Brodie improve so much in this preseason. He's really taken the failed trade attempt as a gut punch and turned it into a positive as he looks to improve himself and in turn improve his football, which the Suns and he will benefit from. In the members meeting as well, I asked Stuart Dew which players excited him the most in this preseason, and he couldn't go past the new recruits Markov and Atkins. He's very impressed with them and looking forward to getting them into his side. The other players he mentioned by name was Jack Bowes, doing a lot of defensive training this season, and Will Brodie. Obviously, we just discussed Brodie, so couple of players that the coaching staff are keen to see develop and progress after what they've shown in the preseason. When quizzed about their game plan and how we should look to see improvements this year from previous years, they've said that they're focusing on ball movement and composure during momentum shifts. Now, that was a real test for them last week against Brisbane, and unfortunately we didn't see too much of a result. But their composure in that fourth quarter when they're under the pump was impressive. It was certainly there. And with the ball movement, we've noticed that they move the ball a lot more down the line, trying to get it quickly into that forward line than what they have in the past. So good, all good stuff there. What else have we got? So I quizzed the Alex Rigby on how he feels with the shorter preseason going into longer games and reduced interchange rotations. How we feel we're travelling, whether we can feel confident that the players are able to run out games and run out a season the way we haven't been able to run out the season before. As you've noticed, we've all had dips in our football performance near the end of each season in the last few years. Now, Alex went on to say the off-season was a big focus on the running and the endurance of the players, hence why Will Brodie went and got himself a running coach. And they were preparing the whole preseason on reduced interchanges and longer games. So they're very confident in their ability that the players are going to be fit and prepared for this. I think there was even a quote somewhere along the lines of all the players on the list were able to run sub 7 or something like, I think 27 out of 30 players ran a sub 650. Something like that. I can't remember it, so I probably better not quote it. So very, very positive with their running and their endurance. And finally, put it to Stuart Dew just before the meeting ended. Is he ever tempted to throw Ben King back into defence if we're having problems with our defence depth, such as Sam Collins going down or and Rory Thompson being unavailable for the season? His response was pretty much no. He viewed Ben King, his future, as being a forward, and he hasn't been tempted to throw him back, and can't see it being a reason to in the next couple of years at least. So Ben King, key forward for the Gold Coast Suns, at least for the next few years. Moving on, the leadership group was announced today. Swallow and Witts are captains. Miller and Collins vice captains. So that's a change with Sexton and Fiorini being dropped from the leadership group. I'm sure they still have a part, but they just don't have an official title. A lot of the players are taking it on themselves to provide that leadership in the group. And from my understanding, it's a pretty close-knit group. Let's get on to another call for tonight. And where are we? Here we go. Any minute now. Jeez, it would suck if he's ghosting me.
Hello, Greg.
Greg, it's Shane from the GCSUNScast. How are you? You're live on the air.
Hey. Hi, how are you?
Good. So, just wanted to give you a call back, and you wanted to discuss how you think the Suns are travelling this year.
Oh, yeah, mate. Mate, I was just wondering how the Suns are going to go this year.
Right, so we discussed earlier in the show, I think we're going to be pushing for a top 8 appearance at the end. We're not going to get there, I doubt it, but somewhere between 8 and 12. Thanks. We'll continue this on the show, Greg, so tune in, and thanks for the call.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, for sure.
So Greg brought up a good point with how we're going to finish. I mean, we have to really push this. I was listening to the Heat Room podcast, my friends over there at the Gold Coast Bulletin, Tom Boswell and Sean Tobin, supporting the Suns with their podcast and getting all the inside goss. So go check them out. They've now got their feed as well, so you can find it on all podcast services. But as I was saying, Sean Tobin was saying that it's time for the community to step up and support the Suns and hold them accountable. And I agree 100% with that. It really is time. To be honest, if the Suns have another poor season, I'm not sure if the GCSUNScast will be back again next year. But touch wood, hopefully that doesn't happen. Really confident the Suns are going to have a good year this year and see progress. I think it's time for us to stand up as fans and expect them to do better. If it's a bottom 4 finish, that's just not going to be good enough. If it's a bottom 6 finish, that's probably not going to be good enough either. I really think they've got to be pushing for the 8. Top 12 is probably my satisfactory mark. Top 8 is above expectations, and probably top 10 is a pass mark. So hopefully the Suns go well this year with all that. I also want to shout out, I've just started an GCSUNScast AFL Fantasy League. So if you're keen on AFL Fantasy, head on over to the Facebook site. You'll see the link there in one of the posts. And join the GCSUNScast AFL Fantasy League. It's been a few years since I was on that, but it looks pretty good. We'll see whether I can find the magic that I had a few years ago. But yeah, love all Suns fans to jump on over and play that little bit of game. I don't know. We'll see how we go. I'm not going to guarantee anything, but there might be prizes at the end of it if we get everyone in there. The medical report came out a few moments ago as well on the AFL site. So we've already discussed Matt Conroy. We know Elijah Hollands, the new recruit, is still TBC. Zach Smith is 7 to 8 weeks away, and we know Rory Thompson is out for the season. But the other one that's on there is Jai Farah. He's done his quad and will be out for a week. So a week for a quad injury sounds like it's just going to be a quad strain. And to follow up on something from earlier in the show, It was 30 players had 2 kilometre PBs. That doesn't sound right, does it? PBs, personal best. 30 players had 2K personal best. That's pretty impressive if that's true. Thanks for that, Paul. So, with that done, the GCSUNScast is finished for another week. Tune in to watch the Suns take on the mighty West Coast Eagles. I don't know why I said mighty West Coast Eagles. Let's face it, they're a very scary side when they're up and about, especially over in Perth. I'm not sure the Suns are going to get this win, but I fully expect them to be competitive. If they can keep it to under a 3-goal margin, I'll be happy, as long as they stay competitive. Let's say Noah Anderson for best on ground if the Suns win, and Ben King with 3 goals. All right, well, that's it for tonight's episode off the GCSUNScast. Stay tuned and keep up with our socials to find all the latest information. We'll be back this time next week with another episode. Go Suns!